You've probably seen the headlines swirling around about a possible $2,000 check. It can get pretty confusing, right? It's your money we're talking about, so all that uncertainty can be stressful. Well, in this explainer, we're going to cut through all that noise and get straight to the facts. Let's dive in.
All right, this is the big one, the question that's on everyone's mind and probably why you're here. Are these checks actually coming? Let's get right to the bottom line.
Okay, let's just get right to it. The short answer is, this is just a proposal. It is not a law. That means right now, no checks are being sent out. You haven't missed anything. So with that out of the way, let's really dig into this whole $2,000 question. We're going to separate what's real from what's just, well, hype, so you know exactly where things stand.
So where did this idea even come from? It's not like it just popped up overnight. It's actually based on a specific concept called a tariff dividend. Let's break down what that even means.
A tariff dividend might sound a little complicated, but the idea itself is actually pretty simple. You know how the government puts a tax on stuff that's imported from other countries? Well, that tax is called a tariff. The proposal is to take all that money they collect and, you guessed it, give some of it back to citizens as a direct payment, a dividend.
And here's the idea straight from the source. This quote really lays it all out. The plan is to use that tariff money to fund these payments, specifically targeting folks with moderate and middle incomes.
You know, this isn't a brand new idea. The conversation has actually been building over the last few months. You can see here how it started with a social media post, then came a suggested timeline, and now there's even talk of a formal proposal to Congress. It's a developing story, which of course brings us to the next big question. All right, now we get to the part you probably care about most. Who would actually get one of these checks? Now remember, these are just proposed rules, but they give us a really good idea of who might qualify. So the big number floating around is that about 58% of all U.S. households could be eligible. That's all based on a proposed income cap of $100,000 a year. If your household brings in less than that, you'd likely be in. But, and this is a really important but, there's a little more to it than that. Okay, this is a key detail you really have to understand. When the government sends out benefits like this, they don't look at household income. That's more for statistics. They look at your taxed filer income. So what does that mean? Well, think about a house with a few adults living in it. Their combined income might be over $100K, but if they each file their taxes separately and they're each under the limit, they could all potentially get a check. It's a pretty big distinction. So who are we talking about here? Well, looking at how past stimulus programs worked, it's a safe bet it would include not just workers, but also folks on fixed incomes. We're talking about people receiving Social Security, whether that's retirement, SSI, or SSDI, and also veterans getting VA benefits. And for these groups, the government already has all their info, so any payment would almost certainly be automatic. No hoops to jump through.
Now, to put this all into perspective, let's see how this proposal stacks up against the stimulus checks from the pandemic. The proposed income limit is actually higher. You might remember the CARES Act checks started to phase out once an individual made over $75,000. This new idea suggests a hard stop at $100,000 with the goal of excluding what they're calling high-income people. Okay, so we've covered the what and the who, but now it's time for a reality check. Because this whole idea, as good as it might sound to some, is facing three, let's call them major hurdles. And here they are, the big three. First, there's a massive funding gap. Second, it has to get through Congress. And third, there's an active Supreme Court challenge that could basically blow the whole thing up. Let's tackle these one by one.
All right, first up, the money. The entire plan is to use that tariff revenue to pay for these checks, right? Well, according to the official data, the amount of money collected from these specific tariffs is about $195 billion. I mean, that sounds like a ton of money, doesn't it?
Well, hold on. When nonpartisan groups ran the numbers, they estimated that sending out a $2,000 check to everyone who qualifies would actually cost somewhere between $300 and $600 billion. So yeah, you don't need to be a math genius to see the problem here. The numbers just don't add up. And that brings us to this conclusion from the experts over at the Tax Foundation. The bottom line is, the money they've collected from tariffs doesn't even come close to covering the cost. So instead of paying for itself, this program would actually make the federal deficit even bigger. Okay, hurdle number 2, Congress. This isn't something that can happen with just the stroke of a pen. To make this a reality, a bill would have to be written, debated, and then passed by both the House of Representatives and the Senate. And in today's political climate, well, that is a huge, huge hurdle to clear. And last but definitely not least, we have a major legal roadblock.
Right now, the Supreme Court is looking at a case that's deciding if these tariffs are even constitutional in the first place. Think about that. If the court says they're illegal, the government might have to give all that money back to the companies that paid it. And just like that, the entire piggy bank for this dividend plan could vanish. So, after all of that, the proposal, the hurdles, the math, what does this all actually mean for you right now? Let's get down to the most important takeaways and maybe the most crucial part, how to protect yourself from scams that are already popping up. Okay, if you remember one thing from this entire explainer, please let it be this. There is absolutely no action required from you right now. You don't need to sign up, you don't need to apply, you don't need to register for anything. If a program like this ever gets approved, payments for most people would be automatic. Anyone telling you otherwise is trying to scam you, period. Yeah, whenever there is buzz about government money, the scammers come out of the woodwork. So please protect yourself. First, just remember what we said, no action is needed. Second, only trust official sources, like the real irs.gov website. Third, be super skeptical of any random calls, texts, or emails asking for your info. And finally, and this is a big one, never pay a fee or give out your personal data to claim a government payment. The real government will never, ever ask for that. So let's wrap this all up. The final takeaway is pretty clear. This $2,000 check is a political proposal, not a confirmed payment. It's facing massive financial, political, and legal challenges. For now, the best thing you can do is stay informed and stay very cautious. The real question isn't just if this will happen, but with all these obstacles, how could it even be possible?